Welcome back, viewers, to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates Television. This morning we're having conversations with Mr. Allan Stewart. He's the director at TEMA, and we're talking about, we know we had that recent incident occurring in Tobago, as mentioned in the news, on April 26, where a visitor was attacked by a shark in Tobago waters there at Turtle Beach, and so we've had to put some things in place, and we are speaking this morning with Allan Stewart, director of TEMA, as we chart the way forward. Good morning, Mr. Stewart, and welcome.
Good morning, Ms. Combie. It's good to be here again, and we're happy that, we have made certain headways going forward. The situation that brought this conversation is very unfortunate, but it is said it's not what happened to you, but how you respond to it, and therefore we are very pleased with the response so far, and we are trying our best to work what is known as emergency response plan going forward, so that we could see that industry return to normalcy as quickly as possible. One can recall in some of our conversations how we felt about the Caribbean Sea dealing with Operation Gulfstream. Nevertheless, we are in a situation now where we see from one incident the bull shark have made its way and did what it did, and therefore we have to respond, but respond in a very professional manner. And so while I'm using the term professional manner, I just want to thank all the first responders who would have responded to the incident. And going forward, we have a lot to do to ensure that if there is a repeat sighting, that we have the necessary plans in place.
Yes, and springing immediately into action upon hearing the news, of course, immediately closing the beaches, primarily for the safety of beachgoers, right? That was a call that came from the Office of the Chief Secretary, I'm sure, under advisement from the necessary authorities, including TEMA, to ensure safety of beachgoers, swimmers, and persons who want to use the beach. And there were so many things happening at that point in time, including some, people, in this space, we make everything into something that is humorous. I suppose. I don't know if it is to deal with the severity of the matter or if it's just our culture. So we're talking now about...
Speak to the ethos of the people.
That's right, that's right.
How we operate.
That's right. And so we're talking now about managing the situation. It has happened. It was unplanned. It's not something that has ever happened in Tobago waters before. And so... preparedness was probably not something in our mind to think of, but in terms of springing into action and putting something in place, even in the interim, what are the next steps now that the beaches have closed? What is the next step? Because not only does the beaches being closed affect the average person wanting to take their sup in the morning. That's one. Yes, our way of life. The older persons, they like to go and take their sup in the morning. We're talking about the economy, as you mentioned. There are so many businesses that are centered on persons visiting the beach. But I know I saw something where it said that the restaurants and the bars at the beach, you can still patronize them. Right, yeah. But I mean, would you really want to go there if you're not... The environment doesn't lend in terms of they're not beachgoers. So we're hearing that some persons are having an issue with that. But I know that things have to be put in place. What are the next steps in terms of how long are the beaches going to remain closed? Why are the beaches not open yet? What is it? Where are you now? Where have you positioned now in terms of ensuring safety and security? I mean, these are sea creatures, and there's nothing that you can say that they definitely will not come back to shore. We can't say that, but how long are the beaches are going to remain closed, and what are the things put in place to at least ensure some measure of safety for beachgoers when we do reopen the beaches?
I just want to remark a few things that are critically important. First of all, we are working with the assumption that there wasn't anything in place. We also working with the assumption that we had a situation on our hands that we never in our wildest dream expected such an event. So we were without a plan, and therefore almost immediately we want to make the best out of this very cruel situation, and therefore it's lend itself to doing what is expected, the responsible thing to do, now that we are clear in our minds that what happened can repeat itself. We were hoping by now, probably tomorrow, we were looking at the reopening of beaches, but may I point out to the Tobago public and the wider listenership is that there was a situation where we set out to have meetings with the Tobago Disaster Management Committee. It's part of our protocol when we have such a type of emergency on our hands. And also it was relevant for us to reach with all of the stakeholders. These stakeholders involve the business sector, the relevant business sectors, such as persons who, the Hotel Association, the Tour Guides Association, the reef tours. We are going to be meeting with them sometime today. We're hoping to strike up that meeting with them themselves. And also, although we have met with some of their the association types, we want to drill it down a little bit because we think that they have a role to play going forward. Now, based on information and the videos that we are still trying to vet it's as factual or not, we had to pause that reopening again because it was reported by one tour operator that the shark is following his vessel. And while we are still yet to prove it to be true, we want to lean on the side of caution and do the necessary fact-finding. I must point out to you that there are 5 major areas in that the committee and the stakeholders have set out to do. One is a risk communication plan, where we look at information coming in. We have pulled together all of the necessary corporate communications from all of the disciplines. For example, tourism, the Office of the Chief Secretary, fisheries, and all likes who have a say in dealing with information management. And one is to deal with the facts. The other is to look at what the media, when I say media, I mean in its plural form, that we'll use to communicate information, and how often those communications will be, what are the do's and don'ts, and it's an opportunity for learning as well. For example, to build confidence in the general public, it requires doing sessions, which we have set out to do. That's the reason why I'm here as well. Set out to do, have the subject matter experts from the within the region who have had the experience, the necessary professionals such as the IMA and the EMA team come in and advise us as to what are the best solutions, what are the best steps to go forward. Also, we look clinically at our beach monitoring activities as to how we do the surveillance. It comprises of fisheries doing the shoreline. We also would have utilized the assets of TEMA, for example, the UAV, to do the flights to ensure that the beach will clear and, you know, there were no sighting. One of my colleagues said, Chief, what are we looking for? So what are we looking for? We're not seeing anything. I say, well, that's good. If you're not seeing anything, then we are doing a good job. If you're not seeing anything, then we don't have a problem. But this video yesterday at the emergency meeting, we recognized that we need to take a second look, get the facts straight, delay the response, going forward. The other thing in the plan speaks to the protocols involved in the reopening process. What do you want to have? Is it a possibility that this can happen again, that the shark could be, or sharks, whatever? How do you respond to it? For example, the role of the first responders. We recognize that the responders involved could be easily identified as the lifeguards. So we met with the lifeguards, the Secretary for Tourism, TEMA, and our colleagues. We met with them. We were able to discuss what is expected of them in terms of an emergency plan going forward. We were able to detail some of the things, and I will share with the public, because I feel that the public also have a role in terms of sighting. And if you see a shark, what do you do? What do you say? Who do you communicate to? So we have established our call center through 211. So anybody sighting a shark, where notification is concerned, they can report it. But I just said sighting a shark. But sighting a shark where? It's important for us to look at the relevance of the sighting to analyze the threat itself. So we have recognized, based on international standards, that we establish what is called a 500 meters radius from where the shoreline is to where the sighting is. And that within that boundary will be considered to be relevant for reporting and also taking certain actions.
Mr. Stewart, I want to ask, we're talking, before you continue, because I know you have a lot of information to give our public, which we definitely need, especially as we're talking about reopening the beaches. And primarily, I know the economy is affected by it, but especially the safety of human life. And there are two things I want to highlight. One, you mentioned the confidence in the public,
Yes.
in terms of the information that is being disseminated. That is something that we really have to pay attention to, because, sometimes we're left to interpretation. And so we have to ensure that the information that comes across, and I'm hoping that the public is listening to the information and paying attention to what is being said and taking the advice that is being given by the relevant authorities and the professionals in the industry who are aware of what is happening. We're talking also now about the protocols in terms of reopening the beaches and talking about sighting of the creature, the shark, at 500 meters from the shoreline. But is there anything that human behavior can cause, or any other thing in the system that can draw the creature into the shoreline again? Because remember, this is something we don't know what happened. We don't know, well, we've not been told what happened and what caused the creature to come this close to shoreline and what caused the creature to attack somebody in the waters,
Yes.
right? And so we need to know, even if we reopen the beaches and we say, okay, we're going to take a chance and go and we sight something, is there something that the human person can do to safeguard themselves or to ensure that we don't interfere with the habitation and the lifestyle and the operation?
I would just like to mention a few of those. One of the things we recognize, and I should slip it in there, is that in the plan, you want to make sure that when you reopen the beaches, you do it on a phase basis and you pay attention to beaches that we know have lifeguards. The lifeguards have been spoken to yesterday. We met with them, and we had this very set discussion. Some of the things that the experts have pointed out to us, there is activities on our beaches that sometimes sea bathers need to pay attention to. One, avoid bathing in areas where they are conducting an activity called chumming, where you have in some of our beaches, you have fish sale taking place, and as you have with their catch, they are throwing back what will be feed into the area. Sometimes you want to avoid your first, this plan speaks of what you do before, during, and after. So you want to avoid bathing in an area that you recognize. So if you recognize that there is ranking, or what you call that same activity that I mentioned, where people are throwing the waste of the fish back into the sea, you want to avoid that area. Those are things that you pay attention to. You listen to the instructions given by the lifeguards. Definitely, they in international standard, where there is a possibility of sighting, they will immediately stick flags or white and red flags to alert the persons that that there is. They will also use their bullhorns to do so as well, to move you to evacuate safely out of the water. Now, this is categorized into four different phases that you want to pay attention to. One, you may have a sighting, but the sighting is not a threat. Two, you may have a sighting within the demarc area that you may have concerns about, so monitoring becomes very, very important. And three, you may see a sighting that you recognize to be a threat, and therefore you will want to be evacuating the beaches, and therefore you will ask persons to evacuate the place. And 4, there may be a category where one is attacked, and therefore you want to make sure that the EMTs or the first aid is administered in a particular way in keeping. And we would have discovered certain things, speaking with the professionals, even the first responders have a responsibility, the medical team have a responsibility. So they will have to indicate where is the rendezvous. You may spot a shark, and if you were reporting it, you need to be able to say approximately the size of the shark. Those are important elements, not just saying you saw a shark and there is a sighting. If you can communicate, is it within the radius that we just spoke about? Is it one that, in terms of its size, is it a small shark? And therefore, anything over 2 meters is actually a concern to us, and definitely the relevant authorities, and that simple can be done by calling 211. 211 links you to all of the other agencies that has to respond.
And we're talking now about lifeguards being part of the first responders.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking training, because it is necessary for them to be trained. I'm not aware of a lifeguard being trained in terms of how do we deal with this incident that took place, as I mentioned. What measure of training is being put in place for lifeguards? And also, I know you're going to be talking more about how sea bathers can safeguard themselves, but what is the public education drive in terms of ensuring people understand? Because you can go on a platform and say, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be inventive in the way we do things, and I think we have to have something that is visual, that people can see. How do I, what do I do? What is the public education moving forward, 1? And 2, is there any measure of training that is going to be given to the lifeguards and other persons who are expected to be first responders, where sighting of a shark, somebody being bitten by a shark, or anything related to that type of behavior again in our waters?
That has begun, and it will intensify going forward, in the sense that, as I said, we met with them yesterday, and there were certain overviews that were made, and the issue of training came up, and we will work towards a training module and schedule that will allow for them to be communicated to, webinars, things like that. So that process, even the subject matter experts are standing by. They gave their commitment yesterday that they are ready to engage them, even from a first aid point of view. What are some of the things that you do? Simple things like, do you throw away the bandages, or what you do? No, it's used for DNA testing in order to help in terms of identifying the animal that you're treating with and the characteristics of that particular animal. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's the agility as to how quick we do it. It is happening, and therefore we are doing all that we can to ensure that we, by the time, if there is another sighting, if there is another attack, that we are prepared to do so. We also did what you call risk assessment, and assessing an inventory as to what these first responders will need. We also will, we went through with the secretary identifying these things. The lifeguards were able to put their cases down, say, where they are in the process, what are some of the best practices, because they themselves, a part of their training, speaks to those issues. They are not green where these matters are concerned, because it's part of their training, but the experience, we have never had cause to go in that direction.
That's right.
And therefore, with that understanding, we feel very comfortable. It's an opportunity for learning and understanding, to build the confidence that you just spoke about. So we are going in that direction. And we hope that very soon we will see the reopening of our beaches. We also will be targeting the hoteliers. We think that these resorts, especially those shoreline resorts, they need to have an emergency plan to deal with a shark attack. Signage is becoming a very important element. There are protocols involved that if there is an incident, then therefore the protocol speaks to closing the beach. How do you do it? Where do you place your sign? What is the size of your signs? What the signs need to look for? Because we had the experience where teams went out from fisheries and other departments and said, you need to leave the beach. We need to leave the beach. And some people, it created a problem. You know, you'd asking me to leave the beach. Asking me to leave the beach. No, what is the reason why I'm leaving the beach? And sometimes signs provide information when no one is there. It speaks continuously, and this is one of the good things about signage. And therefore, the early bathers, for example, the aqua joggers, things like that. When they go down, they need to see a sign saying closure. So we have a lot of work to do, and we are going up against a system where you have procurement regulations and all that kind of stuff. So we are doing what we can to speed up this plan.
Yeah, definitely, because it has to be done. I mean, especially if we want to be we're heading towards, which we have to do eventually, reopen the beaches. And so I just hope that all the things that will hinder or delay would be, looked at so that we can move ahead hastily. One thing I wanted to find out though, we're still observing and monitoring. What is put in place? What are we using in terms of looking for sharks? You said earlier that your members are asking, what are we looking for? What is the mechanism? What is the machine? What is the equipment? What format, or what are you using in terms of looking for any sighting of sharks at this moment? What is being employed?
Currently, there are three mechanisms that we can utilize, two of which we have started utilizing. One is that the Department of Fisheries in the Agricultural Division has the responsibility for 6 nautical miles from the shoreline of Tobago. That is the remit of their responsibility in the Tobago House of Assembly. And they have been conducting these surveillance by their utilization of their boats. They have a very good vessel, and they do that surveillance from, I think it starts around 9 or either 7 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I need to double check the time, to 6 o'clock in the evening. They are doing that daily. Only yesterday we did not do what you call a UAV. We're talking about drones. One of the best standards that they have recognized, and we have seen it too, is that we utilize UAVs, which is drones, and we are able to pipe that information back to the Emergency Operations Center, where we could look at it on very large screens. So our monitoring capability allows us to see an image instead of what you see on your phone. When it sees on a big screen, you will see quite a lot, what the normal eye will miss from looking at a phone or the little tablets that they utilize while they're in the field. The other thing is that we will see being employed going forward is ROVs, and also the general public as well. Fisher folks at sea. I did mention to you that we want to reach with those reef operators. Those reef vessels have a height that in their operations they have a vantage view over the water, and they can. That is one of the essence. But we need to meet with them because they themselves have to have a plan. The plan speaks to communication. The plan speaks to safety at sea. The plans speak to incidents that when it occur, how do you treat with it, if there is. And therefore the roles and the responsibilities of the captain and the crew members, we need to, I gotta say, sit with them, but probably meet with them either virtually or in person. And we want to do that as early as this evening, between 5 and either between 5 and 6 o'clock this evening, where we want to reach out to them and have a meeting with them. I believe they have been communicated to already, and I am willing to make myself available along with the technical team and have that discussion, because it's in their interest as well that we get this thing going.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Mr. Allan Stewart, Director of TEMA, Tobago Emergency Management Agency, and we're talking about charting the way forward as we deal with reopening the beaches and the safety of beachgoers as it relates to the recent incident which took place here in Tobago last Friday, 26, where a visitor was attacked by a shark, which is very uncommon for Tobago. It has never happened in Tobago waters before, and so, of course, it is going to take a measure of the minds coming together, professionals in different industries and different fields that relates to this topic, to ensure that a proper plan is put in place. The protocols, Mr. Stewart is speaking this morning about the protocols and what is being done to ensure our safety, and that we can reopen the beaches soon so that you can enjoy a nice sea bath, and that the economy, of course, the persons who make their income primarily from operating on our reefs and our shores can again engage in this type of business. In closing, Mr. Stewart, is there anything you want to share with our public again in terms of reminding them of adhering, one, to the regulations? I want to plug that in there. Adhere to the instructions and the advice coming from the professionals, and in terms of what they can expect to look out for in the media as it relates to information coming from the necessary agencies where our safety is concerned.
I think it may be just safe for me to reiterate that try to get your information from the right source. Remember, 211 is that link to all of us, and therefore it's one way of receiving information, and also it's one way of disseminating information as well. So use 211 for, you could tap you into subject matter experts on the subject. They themselves at the meeting yesterday indicate that they are quite ready to undertake that task, to be utilized as hotline operations for this event, and we are very we are very proud of their professionalism and what they can do at 211. So we ask persons to be safe, to exercise caution, follow these discussion, and allow for the information to be more education. No, it's one thing to be aware of the dog, but you need to understand in that awareness the characteristics of the animal that we are treating with, and therefore that again will build confidence. And sharks are a very important element of our oceans and our sustainability in life, and therefore we are not in the business of hunting them down to destroy them. We are in the business of understanding exactly the role that they play, and as soon as we understand the creature, we can all coexist in such a friendly environment, which our livelihoods in many different ways depends on the sea. So therefore, those are my closing words.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stewart. They're giving us that information. And of course, I know so many of us think that we are experts in certain areas. I know everybody giving their own opinions and their own experiences, I suppose, with what they think is the correct thing. But please pay attention to the information and instructions coming from the right sources, the right channels, the agencies that have been put in place to give the information and to advise. This is a very serious matter. And of course, we do not want a repeat or anything similar to this reoccurring in our shores. We want to ensure safety, so please adhere, look out for signs, look out for communication coming out from the various agencies as it relates to the safety and the reopening and safe use of our beaches and areas surrounding. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have to go for a short break before we continue conversations in studio with our guest. And of course, before we go for a break, we're going to encourage you to stay with us. And as you stay with us, we of course going to say share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new